Jonathan Edwards preached a sermon where he distinguished between evangelical humiliation and legal humiliation. You have to love the Puritan, old-fashioned language. So legal humiliation, or today we might say humility or the process of becoming humble, this is something that even the demons experience. You know, he references James 2, where the demons shudder at God. This is a kind of humility that you don't need an awakened heart to experience. Anybody can experience this. It just comes from a sense of God's majesty and dreadfulness and power, where you're sort of cowering before God. And then he speaks about evangelical humility. And the word he uses for what produces this kind of humility is the loveliness of God. And he's saying for an awakened heart, a heart that's been touched by grace, that's been touched by the gospel, there's a different kind of humility that is produced by that. When you think about what Jesus did for you, and it really cracks open in your heart that even for me, despite all of my problems and my repeated cycles of problems, God actually loves me, and my sins are actually forgiven. There's a kind of humility that awakens in our heart as we genuinely find ourselves loving and adoring and thanking God. And the metaphor that I've used to describe this that helps me think about it is, imagine you walk into a great, vast throne room, and the king is sitting up on his exalted throne, and your footsteps are echoing on the marble floor, and the ceiling is way high above, and gold is glittering around, and you're very intimidated, and you go and stand before the king. This is one kind of feeling of humility. This is what anybody could feel in approaching God's throne. But then suppose that the king gets off of his throne, he comes to meet you, he embraces you, he expresses his relief that you're okay, he ushers you over to a seat, and you receive breakfast from him, and you eat and you dine with him and have fellowship with him and talk with him. This is another experience, but it's also incredibly humbling, but it's humbling in a different way. To experience this kindness humbles you to the dust. And this is what we should feel toward the Lord God because of the gospel. We think of the King of Kings, who's come down and stooped down to our level, becoming a tiny baby, living an ordinary life, submitting not only to death but to burial for our salvation. This is what our God has done for us. And when we truly contemplate the wonder of that, it produces more than just kind of trembling before God, though that's important and that's a precondition, but it also produces this awareness that the kindness of God, the loveliness of God awakens this new kind of humility in us. And we think, how could we ever boast again when God has been this way to us?